Welcome to our podcast, Where Do We Go? Where we bring in guests to have conversations with high schoolers that are both relatable and informative regarding the idea of female leadership. I'm Kylie, and I'm the founder of the organization and club WeGo, and I'm so glad that you decided to listen to our podcast today. WeGo stands for Women Empowerment and Global Opportunities, and our mission is to cultivate the skill set students will need in order to foster a new generation of strong leaders that will make changes in a field that they want to take on. Because the stage is set for girls and women everywhere. WeGo.
Okay, so welcome to the second episode of our podcast, Where Do We Go? My name is Kylie, and I'm the founder of WeGo. And today, I'm joined by Miss Lynn Miyahira, who will introduce herself in a moment, but she is the account director of IQ360 and the president of the Hawaii United Okinawan Association. So I'll let her introduce herself now.
Well, thank you, Kylie. It's wonderful to be here. I'm honored that you asked me to come on here, and I think I love being able to kind of talk to a lot of younger people. As I'm getting older, it becomes more. That's how I know I'm getting older, right? It becomes more fun to to talk to younger folks. But like you said, my name is Lynn Miyahira. I am one of the account directors at IQ360. It's an integrated communications firm, which for a lot of people that doesn't mean too much. But what it means is that marketing, public relations, and communications in general. It's not just what they're kind of, the lines are being blurred now. So what you used to pay for in marketing and advertising, and then you could get editorial content, which used to be very separate. The lines are blurring a lot, and with social media and all kinds of things like that, it's not so clear cut anymore.
Right.
Anyway, that's what we mean by marketing, integrated communications company. So I've been working there for about 2 years now. It's an agency, so that means that we have a lot of different clients. What we call agency work. A lot of people think that it's just like really hectic because you have all these different clients that you have to get to know. But it's like being the marketing or communications department for many, many different companies. That's what it's like. But at the same time, it's really exciting because I think you get to know about all these different companies. And that's one thing, I didn't know what PR or marketing firms did when I was in high school. So I think this is something I kind of fell into. It's not something I set out to do, but I'm definitely enjoying it. And like you said, I'm also the president of the Hawaii United Okinawa Association this year. It's a very interesting year to be president of this very large organization, but I'm actually absolutely thrilled that, I think it's the silver lining of COVID-19 that we're able to try new things, and our community is totally 100% behind us in like trying all these new things. Virtual platforms, we're buying new equipment, we're putting things online, we have an online marketplace now, things that we have been kind of thinking about doing, but it's really hard to do them while you're trying to plan all these in-person events, right? Yeah. So we had the opportunity, COVID has kind of given us the opportunity to stop, think, and rethink how we do things.
Exactly.
So I think that's a great kind of lesson in how to pivot, how to adjust. Who knew? I mean, I kind of laugh when I look at pictures from January, February, and how we just had no idea, right? We had no idea what was coming and how the year was going to pan out for us. But I think it's actually been a special year for our organization, and I'll get into that a little bit more. I'm also the former marketing director of the Schuyler College of Business at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, where I also got my MBA. And so I think that was a really great experience. I was there for a little over 6 years. And if you include my time as an MBA student, more than 8 years. So that was something I really treasure my time there. I got a lot of experience. I got a lot of exposure to people who are alumni in our community. And it really showed me the power of the University of Hawaii and our local business community. And so that was something I really enjoyed doing as well. So
yeah, that just sounds really cool too. Even for me, like right now, like the whole club, everything's like virtual now. So everything's like, even school too, everything's online.
Yeah.
So it's like totally different.
I give you guys a lot of credit. I mean, especially what grade are you in high school now?
Well, I just started high school. I'm a
Oh,
freshman.
you just started. Okay, so
Yeah.
anybody who's a freshman in high school or a freshman in college, I give you guys a lot of credit. This is not a easy way to start
Yeah.
your freshman year anywhere.
I know.
And I think it's gonna be something that defines your generation. Nobody knows what to tell you or how to help you because nobody knows what they're doing. So it's gonna be a lot of figuring it out, and I think you guys will be stronger and better for it. But I do recognize that this is difficult.
Yeah.
This is not an easy time, and I especially for the college freshmen. You know, college is such a um it's an opportunity to go and hang out and meet people that you normally don't
Exactly
meet
right.
with. And the COVID rules just really put a damper on that. Where you're only supposed to hang, you know, like you have a bubble, and these are the people that you see all the time, and it's hard to branch out. So I really hope that we're able to get to that point where we can, you know, get back to some semblance of in-person normalcy, quote unquote. But until then, I do understand that it's scary. It's kind of scary to be mingling with people that you don't know right now, you know,
Yeah.
whereas
Especially like the
um
new people, the incoming students coming in, like I can't even imagine how it feels to just see all the screens and then going to school and then not knowing
yeah,
anybody. Like that would,
yeah. So I think it's going to be interesting how this generation really evolves. I think, like I said, I don't know how exactly, but I do think it's going to be a defining, you know, all of you will remember this whole year and how crazy it was. And
yeah,
um, hopefully, you know, years from now, you'll be able to tell people stories. People will ask you stories about it. So make sure
I
you
think so.
guys,
Yeah.
another suggestion, keep a diary. This is something that somebody told me. Keep a diary, a
Hmm.
journal, kind of like for me, it was I was told to keep a leadership journal because years from now, people will ask you, what was it like to be, you know, for me, what was it like to be the president of the Okinawan Association in this difficult year?
Right. Yeah.
And rather than just, you know, it might be 20 years from now for all I know, but rather than just trying to do it all from memory, like actually jot things down, keep a, you know, I keep it in the notes in my phone, but having like memories or things that you can jot down as either crazy experiences or things you didn't expect, things that were difficult, things that were really frustrating too.
Yeah.
To take note of that.
Right.
So how is your freshman year going? Are you guys back in
Yeah.
in-person
Yeah, we are
classes?
actually, it's kind of like an option. Like some of us can be in person, some of us can like opt out to either
Hmm.
be at school or not. I chose to be in school because I just don't like online learning just for me. It's
Yeah.
just pretty hard. Everything's asynchronous for online, so it's hard to,
Mhm.
stay motivated, stay
Yeah.
productive. But for right now, it's kind of weird because everything is, make sure everything is social distance and everything is like make sure you have
Hmm.
your masks and during lunch too, we have, these barriers between us and you can't talk to anybody during lunch and it's like it's a lot different
Sorry.
from
It's a
yeah.
lot. Wow. I
Yeah.
am, like I said, keep a journal because I bet you people
Yeah.
won't believe this in even,
Yeah.
you know, 5 years. They're going to be like, wow, remember that? Remember 2020 when you guys started school and it was crazy and you
Yeah.
couldn't talk to people during lunch? You know,
Right.
box.
Yeah.
Um, I think it'll be something that people honestly you'll be able to say, I was my freshman year and here's what it looked like. And the kids from now, like in the future, will not believe us, I don't think.
Yeah. And I feel like teachers are making like an even extra effort to make us connect and
Mm,
interact, you know. So I think that is also something that teachers are working to integrate into like the curriculum is like, seeing how to have like time for student interaction so that we can get to know one another better,
right.
especially
And
for
not,
the online students. Yeah.
yeah, it has to be a little bit like just let them talk to each other without you there, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
is the key.
Mhm.
Because I wouldn't want to talk to people I don't know in a
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
facilitated conversation. Yeah, that's just kind of odd. But yeah, I'm really, really um I don't know all of your class, but I'm already proud of, the obstacles that you guys have had to overcome. Like, I
Yeah,
think it'll make you guys, um, mentally stronger in the future. So
yeah.
that's
I think
good.
it's like a blessing in disguise, sort of.
Yeah, it's tough right now,
Mhm.
and it's just kind of weird. Like it's terrible. Like it just kind of sucks that you can't celebrate Halloween normally, like
Yeah,
how you would normally do, right? But I
yeah,
mean, I think if everyone takes it with a grain of, this will be a fun story that you can
yeah.
tell
Exactly.
in the future, that it makes it a little bit easier to
I know, but
handle.
that's a good idea. I think I'll maybe start like something, writing down stuff and
A COVID journal,
yeah. My mom
because
was
we're
like,
not out of this yet. Yeah, like
yeah,
I mean, I really thought by October we'd be a little bit more back to normal,
yeah,
but
exactly.
um, who knows, right? Where we are.
Yeah, maybe like one of our journals would be like Anne Frank one day and like
Yeah,
it'll be like
exactly.
published and stuff. Yeah.
Diaries of Kylie Hamamoto
Yeah.
from 2020, the year COVID took over the world.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, it might be kind of cool.
Yeah.
There you go. One suggestion. Everyone keep a diary.
Yeah. And also like also this is another like um story, but I've been learning the sanshin, which
Hmm.
for those who don't know is an Okinawan instrument. And I've been learning
Yes.
from Masandu sensei for
Mm-hmm.
a pretty long time now. I think for ever since I was like 10 maybe. So kind of a long time.
Wow.
It's been a long time, but and he actually got me in contact with our guest today with you. So, this episode is, possible thanks to him.
Thank you, Masandu
Yeah.
Sensei.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how did you come to now I'm interviewing you, but like how did you come to be interested in the Sanshin?
Well, at first, I really liked the sound. I remember listening to Keizu and then like listening to the Sanshing sound because our family likes to listen to Keizu, my mom especially. And so I was like, oh wow, that sounds kind of nice. And so my mom at the time, she also worked at Hawaii Hochi with Masanju
Mm,
Sensei. So, she was asking around her coworkers. She's like, "Oh, do you guys know where we can learn like where Kylie can learn to play Sanshing?" And so then one of her coworkers said, "Oh, he actually plays and teaches something like he's like one of the best." And so my mom's like, "Oh, really?" So she goes up to him and then, you know, he's like, "Oh yeah, I can
that's
teach you."
great.
So then that's how it kind of happened, yeah.
Well, that's great. I heard he's trying Google Meets now.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah, every Tuesday the Google Meets and we all come and practice.
That is awesome. I know, like, that's been one thing that I'm really proud of our Okinawan community. And this is where it helps to have multi generations, right?
Yeah.
The older folks, you'd be surprised, and when push comes to shove, and they would have to learn Zoom, Google
Yeah.
Meets, you know,
Now
and to
WebEx and
communicate, yeah, WebEx to communicate via email more often than they prefer to have in-person meetings.
yeah.
But when COVID hit, a lot of people realized, oh, they're going to have to get used to this. And they stepped it up and they learned how to use all these different technologies. I mean, these are people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Hmm.
So I am really proud of them because nobody complained. Nobody said, oh, never mind, and,
Yeah, exactly.
especially as we got more and more months into it, where there was a realization like, oh, this is not going away anytime soon. And so people started learning more on their own. And I think it's a real testament to showing too, like we asked many of our younger generation, like, hey, now is the time to step up and like help your family members, help everyone get, their computer, like download the apps for them, set it up so that
Yeah.
it's easy to just click on it. That way, it's easier for them. But we need you right now.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people did step up to the plate. They actually went from house to
Yeah.
house for their
Yeah.
aunties and uncles and had to set up the apps on the TV, so that they can just like click into YouTube easier
Right. Yeah.
than having to do that. And that to me is a real power of having community, right? So that was another great thing. And we started this Yuntaku live show because 3 weeks into the pandemic, there was this realization like, wow, we seen other people do musical concerts live on
Oh yeah,
Facebook,
yeah,
and
yeah.
we're like, that would be great because everyone's missing, like their Okinawan music right now, right? Unless you can play it on whatever Spotify, but so we tried with Kenton Sensei first, Kenton Odo.
Yeah.
And it was really just a shot, like, let's just try it. Let's just test it and let's see if it works, not realizing when we sent out the email to our community that we would get like 2,400 people, boom, like logging in right away. And then by the end of the night, I think people had, sent it to friends and realized you can watch it. Even if you missed it, you can still watch it on YouTube. 6,000 people by the end of the night. Wow. And it was like realizing that this is something people want and they need it right now, especially March and April were really scary, right? In terms of like, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, this feels like a movie that I'm living in, but it's real, and it was scary to not know what this virus could do to people. We had no idea how it was going to affect our community, if we're going to have, I was literally imagining those movies, Contagion, things like that, where people, like you have mass spread, and I'm thinking outbreak and things like that. And it was scary, but I'm glad we were able to kind of work around it, and that we are still, working towards doing more virtual platforms and figuring out, because it looks like, 2021 is still a bit unclear. And what we've realized too is that for the Okinawan community, it's been there are advantages of the virtual platform that even after COVID, right? These are things we're going to keep. These are things we're going to hang on to. These are things that we don't want to get rid of once COVID goes away. So just trying to make that more accessible to everyone, and making sure that we're picking the best, type of platforms and all of that kind of thing. So
I even talked about this with my mom, like, all the phone orders now, you can just pick it up and call and pick it up, and then she was like, oh, why haven't we done this like earlier, like even before COVID, like just call and then pick up the food. It's so much easier, and just like everything,
right. Yeah. And then I think businesses have had a tough time, right? Businesses have had to adjust to, now they're doing sort of like dine-in / takeout / curbside pickup. And I know a lot of businesses are being stretched thin, they feel like they're having to figure out all these things on the fly. But hats off to all of our small businesses who've, adjusted, tried their best to just figure out what to do when there is no playbook. There's nobody there to tell you exactly how to do this. And so I really have a lot of respect for all the small businesses in our community.
Yeah. There's really like, admirable and things like that. And so actually this kind of can jump into like a question. This is like a question we ask like all the time to our speakers that come in, and we want to know, like, who are some of the women in your life that you admire?
That's a great question. Right off the bat, first person that comes to mind right now is my boss, Lori Teranishi. She started IQ360. Well, she moved it back to Hawaii about 10 years now. And it's just really exciting to see what she can do as a small business owner. I kind of think of us as a startup sometimes, because we're only like 16 of us, and we're very nimble. We're very, I'll use the word scrappy. We figure it out. I think that's what makes us really good. And we all kind of get that from Lori. I've seen her do, and pull off and kind of think through some really complex problems. And so every day I'm learning a lot from her, and that makes me excited that I still feel like, I'm 2 years in, and I still feel like I'm learning every day. One thing I would definitely, I feel like my writing skills have improved a lot over the last 2 years, and that's something that I would definitely recommend no matter what field anybody goes into, being able to write clearly and making sure that your meaning is conveyed, and that the people who are receiving your reading, so who your audience is, if you can convey your messages clearly, you will be successful no matter what you do. And it's such a needed skill across any sector, Like just being able to write emails clearly so that the person on the other side of it understands what you want, what you need, and what it's for. You'd be amazed how hard that is for some people. And like, there's sometimes I'll read an email and I'm like, I still don't understand what you want me to do. Or are you asking me for something? Do you need something from me? Like, I don't quite understand. So,
That's interesting you say that. That's because our school, like, they even have like a whole unit of email etiquette and, how to email your teachers, don't use emojis, don't use this, don't email like how you would text and, really like things that, and they make us practice it all the time. So I think that's also interesting that you brought that up.
That's gonna help you guys in a million different ways. And in terms of what kind of like I said, any field, like you're an accountant, you have all you're doing is emailing your clients and your coworkers all day and making sure that they understand what you need, right? Even if you're an actor, you still need to be able to communicate really clearly, right? People who are, and that's why it helps in so many different fields that it's just really important. And the more, I'm realizing being in the communications field now, a lot of times what we're trying to do is make sure that we have to get our words down less and less. We're trying to be very succinct, be very clear with fewer words, which is hard, right? And so somebody said once, I'm sorry, but I did not have time to revamp this email. So here's the full 10 pages. And right, it's like, whoa. What's hard is actually not writing the whole 10 pages, which I think when you're in school, it's always like, oh my God, I have to write all this work.
Right.
It's actually harder to write less and make sure that it's clear. And if you can fit everything you were going to say in the 10 pages in 2, even better.
Yeah.
But it's harder. It's actually harder to do.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that writing skills are something I'm definitely still working at. It's going to be something I know I'll be working at forever, really. So, and it's not something that comes real naturally to me. It's something I've had to work at. But I do appreciate those skills, and it just makes me appreciate really good writing when I see it in other places. Like, oh wow, that's really good. And so that's one thing I would highly encourage. No matter what science, or guess what you do? You write reports all the time. And so writing is a key skill.
Okay.
So, and sorry, getting back to your other question, right? Your original question was what other women? So there's Lori. Shout out to Lori Tarnishi. And then also, other women in my life that have really inspired me. So today actually is my grandmother's 101st birthday.
Oh, wow.
She lives in Seattle. Yeah. And it just made me realize I have a photo of her that I got to post on Instagram later, right? But she's lived an amazing life, and it's a very different era, right, from the one that you and I are in right now. But she was a very strong-willed woman, and she kind of never let things get her down. She and it's just a real testament to, like, living a strong and purposeful life. I think she always had a lot of purpose, and I think the Japanese word for it is ikigai. Ikigai. It's like living your life with a sense of purpose, and that helps you live longer. They've scientifically proven, I know, that having a sense of purpose helps with your well-being, your health, in your life, right? And then I don't know if people know too, in Okinawa, it's like we have the most people over the age of 100. I think in the world, maybe don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's one of the largest places in the world where we have people over 100 years old. And they've noticed part of the reason of that, it's not just, the healthy diet and the fresh air, but it's the social connections, it's the purpose in life that really helps them live longer, healthier lives, right? And so my grandmother, Grandma Helen, shout out to her. Happy birthday. Happy 101st birthday.
Yay. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Grandma.
Wow.
But yeah.
That's that's amazing. Being able to, stay that healthy for so, I don't know, that's so amazing to me.
Yeah. I'm just like I feel it makes me feel like I got a long way to go, you know, like I have no
Yeah,
reason to uh give up anytime
I
soon.
know.
Man, I got a lot to work on.
I know.
So
Seeing like how active, all my grandmas are and stuff like that, like I feel like when I say, "Oh, I'm tired," like I don't think I should be tired if, they're so active. It's
exactly. It's
yeah.
like I have no excuse, right?
Yeah.
I'm literally 1/3 of your age. Like,
Yeah.
you know, how does this work? But I think there's actually a lot of women who work in communications. It's one of the fields, professional fields that actually attracts a lot of women. Um, our firm, IQ360, is actually predominantly women. We only have 2 guys out of 16. It is an industry that is it's very fast paced, but it can be, I think it can be flexible, with a flexible schedule. Only thing is that if your clients need you, they need you now.
Yeah.
So it's a bit difficult to say that there is quote unquote flexibility. You're kind of on all the time, but it's very rewarding. And I think part of communications is not just, give me talking points and help me draft this and that. It's actually trying to help people in many different ways communicate what their messages are. And for that has been one area and so it's thinking strategically more, um, how is this going to be perceived? What are the actual goals that we're trying to achieve, and making sure that the communications are in line with that. I think making sure that more women who work in communications actually are in those top level CEO positions, I think is something that we're going to see more of in the future, hopefully, and that people are noticing that it's not something that you just leave to your communications department. It's something that needs to be in the C-suite. It needs to be in the top levels of whatever organization you're dealing with, whether it's a nonprofit, for-profit business, government. Like, your communications lead needs to be in that top tier of decision making, so that people, it's part of the whole decision making process. So I know a lot of women who get into the field either have degrees in journalism, communications, marketing, but some people, they have history degrees. They have degrees in, anthropology or something like that. But, because there's a lot of understanding how humans work, they're trying to oftentimes get something very complicated down to a few sentences that makes sense to most people. And I think understanding how socially connected people are, how certain words will trigger certain emotions and things like that, have been something that's embedded in communication. So I definitely encourage people, any young women interested in the field. Basically, what you need to know is you need to know about everything, and that's the hard part, right? So I'll give you an example. Right now, I have a bunch of different clients. One is a construction company, a hospice firm, a startup accelerator, a healthcare company that helps Medicaid patients, a cosmetic firm, or cosmetics and personal care products, I would say, and the list kind of goes on and on like that. And so you have to be a little bit of you have to learn about every one of your companies very quickly, and you have to be able to jump in and think, okay, what is important about this company? What is appealing about this company? What do people know this company for? But something that might be true or untrue, right? But it makes you a bit of a generalist. So you know a little bit about everything, jack of all trades. And I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to, be able
It's
to.
interesting. It's tough though. It's very tough. Like, it takes a lot of outside, spending my own time reading about I don't know anything about the construction industry, but when you have a construction client, you better start to get more familiar with terms, what their business cycle is like, who their clients are. I don't even know the name of their competitors, right? So, and just having to do a lot of research on my own time, but it really makes you feel like you just start to know a lot about the world in general. And that's what's exciting about it.
That sounds really exciting too. And I feel like communication is something that I think can be like applied no matter how like technologically advanced we get, because like there's technology goes to a certain extent where because everything about communication is not only verbal but it's like non-verbal too. And that's like super important. And I feel like sometimes technology doesn't get that sometimes. So
right. And yeah, like the images we use, we have a creative department, which means that these are the people who are graphic designers, web designers. Those are going to be really important jobs in the future. And like, how do you lay out a website so that it's just the colors you use? That's very, that says a lot. And then the fonts you use, that says a lot. And then how you lay things out, is it intuitive? Is somebody who's never been to your site going to be able to find things?
Right.
What's the best way to set up the architecture? Those are all things that are very, very important to somebody who does work in the, they're not just artists, but they're actually thinking about how people think and, where are they looking for things, right? Because there's a specific area where you would look for, a menu, or I'm looking for the social media icons, or I'm looking for contact information. There's certain places you go, right, on a website. And if it's not there, you kind of get thrown off.
Right, yeah.
What happened, right? Or how come I can't find the contact info? It should be right here in the footer. And so there's a lot of jobs like that are going to be very, very, very important I'm not even the future. They're important right now. So, they have jobs that did not exist when I was in college, which was like a UX UI developer. So it's a user interface, user experience developer, designer, right? And so you're thinking of how people interact with websites and making sure that the design fits how, a natural, intuitive way that people work with websites. And that's something I definitely did not learn at all. Like that did not exist when I was in college. So even within my short, lifetime, there's new things that are going to come up that are going to be really, really exciting and important. Yeah. But no matter what, you're still going to have to know how to write. You're still going to have to know how to communicate with people.
So then how do you have you always wanted to, because I know that you mentioned that you didn't know you were going to pursue, marketing and stuff like that. So was there like a specific person or like maybe experience that made you want to get into that kind of thing?
That's a really good question. And the answer isn't necessarily yes or no, but so I graduated with my MBA back in 2010. So this is 2 years after kind of the Great Recession. And a lot of companies are still not hiring. They're still kind of in a low point. They're furloughed. People are still furloughed. And, it wasn't a great time to be looking for a job. So I applied to maybe 10, 12 different jobs and I didn't get any of them. That was very disheartening, right? It was very kind of discouraging. It was a blow to my own ego, but it was also a blow to my finances. Like I was getting worried, this is not where I was planning to be 2 months out of graduation. And, I got scared. But I ended up finding just like what started off as a part-time job ended up being a full year. I worked at a retail place in Ala Moana. I worked at the Aveda salon. Completely not anything I had ever thought I wanted to do. I had zero retail experience. The only thing I did know is I spoke Japanese.
Right.
And they were excited that I spoke Japanese. They're like, sure, you're hired, like day one, literally, like, can you start today? So I was like, sure. And I like the products. Why not? Right. What I learned from that experience is to keep going even though you felt like you're being knocked down. And you know, you may not be in a job that you want to tell everyone about, and it's kind of like, well, this is kind of where I ended up for now, but still looking and trying to remain positive through all of that was a really, really important lesson. But I think what it taught me was I learned, you know, kind of the basics of advertising marketing, because as I was in a retail, you know, business, and then it's a franchise actually of the larger brand, and then it's a lot of inventory management, it's a lot of and then it's also the working like with people that I realized I enjoyed that. From there I got a marketing position at the business school at Schuyler at UH, and that's when I realized, you know, that's the part of business that I felt like I was actually pretty good at. I felt like marketing was a catch-all for many other functions that maybe didn't fit everywhere else. And so our little office did a lot of different writing. We did creative work, video, event planning. I mean, it was almost, you know, the whole gamut. And I really enjoyed it. What I enjoyed was being able to help solve problems. You know, like we were the figure it out crew. You know, if you had a problem and you didn't really know what to do about it, you actually probably, a lot of people came to our office and tried to figure it out, you know, and knew that we would be able to figure it out somewhere, you know. And that really kind of inspired me to what we do now in communications. It's really a lot of that. It's a lot of problem solving, trying to help our clients figure out what to do in a situation where they're not exactly sure what the answer is or how they even got there in the first place. So it's kind of more along the lines of business consulting, I think is what, you know, when people say like business consultant, what does that mean? That means somebody has hired you to help solve a problem that they could not solve themselves. So what we always have to remember is if we're delivering something that they could have figured out themselves, then we probably need to think bigger. Think, you know, like if they're hiring us because they had a problem that they couldn't quite figure out for themselves, or we're assisting them with, you know, maybe they just don't have the bandwidth to do it. They're just all so busy. But that's part of the thing that I enjoy a lot about my business. And it's also what I think helps me a lot with the Okinawan Association, especially in a year like this, in 2020, when we, like I said, there is no playbook. It's just figuring it out and not being afraid to, like, you know, I guess it is scary when you don't know anything, but if you've tried a few different things and you have a little bit of experience in all these different areas and you know other people who have tried it this way, it becomes less scary, right? And I was like, okay, I've seen this before, maybe a little bit, we'll do it our way, but I've seen somebody else do a live stream like this. We just got to figure out like exactly what platform they use, and I think we could do it. But it's kind of jumping into that head first and not being afraid. Because you will fail. There'll be times when you fail. Like, I don't know if you watched our Yuntaku live. We do it every Tuesday evening, but we used it as a practice for our virtual Okinawan Festival.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of things you just have to try by trial and error. It's really hard not to. You just got to try it, right? And if it's not, it has to air like how you're airing it for real. And there was one episode where we literally just had to stop and see, like, I'm so sorry, cancel, because we could not get our audio working, and it was so like echoey and and we're just like, you know, sorry, but we are trying all this new equipment. But you have to be able to try, you know, and to not be afraid to try. Of course, you don't want to fail like often. You don't want to do it too often, but making sure that you aren't too afraid to try things is something that I think is a real asset to, especially this year.
I think so too. Like, and actually, I think now, like, I kind of want to talk to you about, you know, the Okinawan Association, because
Mm.
that's something that I was like really interested in talking to you about
Mhm.
today. But I think one of like the main questions was like, just as president, what is like your vision for the future, of the Okinawan culture? Like, what do you hope to see? What do you, hope to accomplish?
It's a really good question. And I think one of the things I want to, I hope for the future is that we continue to engage with a new generation, kind of a younger generation of volunteers and make space for them in terms of like, how can you help the organization? What kind of skills can you bring to help make our organization better and stronger? Because we have a lot of really talented people who are willing to give so much of their time and energy and passion to the organization. So we just got to make sure that we um, make room for them. And then also, but at the same time, as like a 40,000 person organization, sometimes we don't want 40,000 different ideas that are going in
Yeah, yeah,
all over the place, right? So it is kind of our job to also like bring everyone together and kind of choose the path that we think is going to be best so that, everyone else can help follow along, to coordinate, to facilitate, to kind of bring ideas together. And sometimes it's about picking one that we want to move forward and we're going to go with. And that's kind of hard sometimes when you want to, you want to do multiple different ideas and everyone's got their own ideas and sometimes they're competing ideas and not everyone agrees. And to the challenge is always going to be, how do we remain connected as a community but still allow for different, how do you remain united but then allow for creativity at an individual basis as well. So what I hope for the future is that as long as we kind of focus on making sure that people feel connected personally, like emotionally connected to the organization, and they understand why they are involved, that we still kind of resonate with people as to helping them identify as Okinawan and what it means, and that they can be proud of that. Because that will spill over to all different types of things, And I think that's our goal, our mission is to promote, preserve, and perpetuate Okinawan culture here in Hawaii. And there's a lot to be proud of. There's a lot to make sure that our stories continue out to the future. And so, however, stories continue in different formats throughout the years. And that's how we're going to have to keep evolving continually. So right now, like, right now we have WebEx and YouTube. In 5-10 years, maybe that's not going to be the platform that everyone uses, right? It's probably not going to be Facebook at that point. We're going to have to move to the new, whatever the newer platform is, and that we continue to evolve that way is what I hope for the future. But at the same time, what's really important is that we hang on, we don't forget, right? We are able to still bridge the past with the future so that we don't forget our history, we don't forget our stories from the past, we don't forget all the people who came before us, and making sure that those stories stay alive and that we have connection to them too, while moving forward at the same time.
Like it's kind of interesting because just talking to you, I can also like see how you're connecting kind of like the skills and what you learned from IQ 360 to over to your role in the Okinawan Association. It's cool to see that bridge, and like how you use that idea of communication and connection in the Okinawan Association too, to connect people, to keep everyone communicated and stuff like that. Super interesting. Yeah.
It's always something that's a little bit difficult to somebody's like, how do you have a full-time job and do the Okinawan Association stuff at the same time? And I'm not gonna lie, it's difficult. I stay up late, it's basically I do 8 hours of work a day or plus more, right, for work, and then I come home and I do another 4 or 5. Like that's basically what it takes. And a lot of my weekends are often spent doing stuff for the Okinawan Association because I'm busy at work during my regular, work hours. But having said that, I think what drives me to do it is that I definitely feel like how you just said that one feeds the other. And
Right,
I've been
exactly.
able to be successful at my job at IQ because of the work I did with the Okinawan Association. And then the work I did with Okinawan Association is helping me, there's it goes both ways. And so I would definitely suggest to people, one of my biggest recommendations is that, people always talk about networking. What does that really mean, right? To me, that means volunteering your time to do something that's meaningful. So like whether it's a project or spending time with an organization, so you get to know people so that they understand how you work. Because working on a project together, there's nothing like knowing somebody really well by working on a project with them, right? You get to see how on time they are, how they operate. And when you work well with somebody on projects that aren't necessarily your job, it's your volunteer time, right? People are willing to stick their neck out for you. And that's what you mean by a wide network, right? So when we say, okay, go out and network, it's not just like, oh, hi, my name is Lynn. What do you do? That's like not very deep. The way you build connections with people so that they are willing to put their neck out for you is to get involved and help them with projects that they need. Volunteer your times, volunteer for a lot of these nonprofits so that people can see your work ethic. And once they see your work ethic, they will be more willing to write letters of recommendation for you or tell people like, oh, this person is a really good worker, because they've seen the work that you've done as a volunteer. And then that spills into, hopefully in the future, it spills into your professional life as like people are willing to write really stellar recommendations for you because they've seen your work.
Right. Show rather than tell.
Right. Show me rather than tell me. And if you can show people, the only way to show people is to actually, work with them. Is to actually do it. And so, that shouldn't be the only reason why people do community service. Of course, there's, sometimes it's like something you got to do because you're, hopefully, I know a lot of students have to do it as part of a requirement. But the hope is that you find something while doing something that's required of you, you find something that you're actually passionate about that you would enjoy doing, even if it wasn't required. Sometimes we need that push, right? We need that impetus to push us to do something that we normally wouldn't do in order to find your passion.
I think that's super important too, because, like for my organization, WeGo, it's the whole purpose of, all these podcasts that we're doing is to give exposure to girls who, don't know what they want to do yet. Because there's so many like new career paths that are going to come one day. And, just having exposure from different things and finding what they like, what they don't like is important for, kids our age. Because, we don't know what we're going to do yet for a lot of us.
And how would you know, right? Like, if you've never, like, I know I worked for 1 year at an accounting firm. Now, I'm not an accountant, and I'm definitely like my personality and my interests are not in accounting, but I have a lot of respect for accountants. And I was doing the marketing for an accounting firm only because it's a skill that I know I do not have. So, but I met a lot of people who I have so much respect for because, and the way they found accounting was through exposure. Somebody in their house or somebody, in their family was an accountant for many times. But if you don't have anybody in your family who's an accountant, like, how would you know that this is something that it's a good job? It's great for people who pay attention to detail. It's great for people. And what I didn't know is that there's two different, there's in most firms, there's tax and there's an audit. I had no idea what the difference was. Okay, so there's tax and audit, and they're very different types of accounting. Audit, people who really like audit are people who like to figure out how your business works. So like the people who like to figure out, look at all your finances and figure out. And to a lot of people, that is fascinating, right? Like if I can tell you where all your money is going, I can give you a better sense of like how your business operates. I have a very good idea. And it's almost like forensic accounting, like people like investigating, and that's why it was exciting because they could find places where people the business themselves didn't even know they were spending this much, right, on certain things. But as an auditor, you get to really delve deep into somebody's books, and it's like really finding out what the business is made out of. And so I knew a lot of people who were just fascinated by that. And I had a lot of respect for them because I mean, I knew it was something that I wasn't going to do, right? Like I didn't have any inkling of the education that I needed to do that, but I was proud to be able to market their services for them and like tell people how great they were and that you needed them. Trust me, you need them, right? But I think finding those types of jobs, it is difficult. Like, how would you know as a student that that's something you want to do? So I would, I just worked on this project called Hawaii Career Pathways, and I'd highly recommend it. The website literally just launched last week.
Oh, okay.
So you go to hawaiicareerpathways.org, and there's a lot of these different career exploration tools, a lot of videos, a lot of like, I don't know what a state senator does, but here's what their daily life looks like. Here's what an orthopedic therapist does. I haven't had time to actually look through all the videos, but a lot of them are kind of this career exploration, which is right now what you guys should be doing right now. Like just kind of not having to commit right now to any
just thinking,
career, but thinking about, wow, that would be kind of cool. Or I don't even know what that person does. Maybe you've heard the words before, but not exactly sure what they do. So yeah, highly recommended that everyone, especially our students, go to hawaiicareerpathways.org, and you can, they try to have as much information on there about salaries too. Like, I had no idea anesthesiologists made so much money. I should have done that, is what I was thinking as I was helping with this website. But it's just things like that, where if somebody had told me a long time ago, about certain jobs, that things might have worked out differently, but it's a matter of how would you know, right?
And that's what's so great about like right now, like when everything's online, is that we can meet with these like professionals from wherever. Like we met with someone from New York who's living in New York, so we WebExter from New York, from Hawaii. So it was like, we get to meet with anyone, any place, and that's so amazing that we get the opportunity to do so, because without this experience, we wouldn't be able to make that connection from so far away.
It's funny, right? Because it's something it was available to us earlier before COVID.
But we just
didn't think about it. And I was like, actually, all of this stuff, like a lot of it, for instance, I've, in the beginning of COVID, I was having all these Zoom like friend meetups, and these were people, some of them I hadn't seen in years. And it was just because of the opportunity to like everyone get online, and we live in all these different cities and everything. And now we can, come together and meet and check in on everyone. How's everyone doing? It actually was available to us before the pandemic. Like it was, I was totally, the technology was there, but we just didn't have time to think about it. And I think that's, like you said, the silver lining. It's the blessing in disguise that we've been given.
I mean, I know, it's like just amazing, because like it was like right in front of us the whole time, but we just never really used it, and that's kind of funny, but also grateful too, in a way.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, and then I also have like, this is just some questions that I have just about the Okinawan culture. As someone, I'm not Okinawan, but the Okinawan community has been like really welcoming, super supportive of me and my passion for the sanshin. So I would like love to see non-Okinawans be able to experience what I have, because I feel like that's just such a great aspect of the culture, because like even though I'm not Okinawan, I feel like I am, which is like amazing. And so like maybe could you comment on ways that people who are not Okinawan can still get involved and become like part of the culture?
Yeah, so we like to call you guys Okinawans at heart. Definitely, a lot of people, and there's actually for membership in the Hawaii United Okinawa Association. So it's an umbrella organization, and there's 50 different clubs underneath the organization, and actually many of them are kind of clubs that are started as village clubs back in Okinawa. So a lot of the families are in the same club, but there's a lot of clubs, and I'll give an example. The Young Okinawans of Hawaii, they one of their presidents laughed because he's like, our name is Young Okinawans of Hawaii, but you don't have to be young or Okinawan to actually be a member. And there's no requirement. It's not like you have to take a genealogy test or anything like that. Actually, many of the clubs are open to members, and a lot of our best members are either like a lot of spouses or just friends of people who are in the Okinawan community, because we know that it's not just about us, right? It's about reaching out to the wider community and making sure that other people feel this sense of community supporting each other. So technically there's so Shinka is another young person's club, Young Okinawans. There's a club called Hui Maka'ala, who that club was formed, I want to say 40 something years ago, because it was the young person's club back then. And they wanted a club that wasn't based on family ties, right? And so it was a scholar, they have a scholarship, they do a fashion show. It's really neat, actually. And there's a lot of people who are just like common interests and wanting to come together. It feels good to be part of a community that takes care of each other. And I think, so I would encourage, a lot of people, especially the way that most people who aren't necessarily Okinawan but get involved in the Okinawan community is through performing arts. Asa, which is the drums, Sanshin, Paranku, which is the little drum, dance, Okinawan dance, whether it be music, karate is another huge one, where it's like a worldwide thing. You don't have to be Okinawan clearly to do karate, but it's through the performing arts that you develop an interest, and therefore you want to learn a little bit more about the history, which will take you to Okinawa most times, right? And then that is one of the beautiful things, and it's one of the the gifts that Okinawa has to give to the rest of the world. And so that's what I would encourage people to do. If you want to get involved with the Okinawan community, the best way to do it, I think, is through performing arts. Another way to do it is through food.
Definitely, right.
We have a very new event that we just coined this year called the Okinawan Festival. Coming up next week, actually. Starting next week, we wanted to highlight a lot of our Okinawan-owned restaurants in Hawaii. And right now during COVID, it's just been such a tough year for them that we want to, literally help save them. Because if we don't support, especially the restaurants that serve Okinawan food, which are kind of rare, there's only a handful of them. If we don't support them right now, there's a possibility that we could lose them forever. And so we're asking the community at large, of course the Okinawan community, but the community outside, the Hawaii community at large, here's a list of Okinawan restaurants. You can go to hawaiiokinawans.com and see like a comprehensive list, and that we're going to keep updating this list because we know that there are others out there. And we just want to make sure, again, this is about preserving our stories for future generations. I think we used to have a list like this, but it's like in a paperback somewhere printed. But now it's time, we got to put it on a website, right? We need to have it available for people to read that way. And so check it out, hawaiiokinawans.com. It's a brand new website. We literally just got up again 2 weeks ago. So I think that's the era of COVID, right? New websites, new platforms, and trying to get things done in a fairly short amount of time, and just moving ahead. So check it out. It's another great way for Okinawans and Okinawans at heart to get to know Okinawan restaurants, Okinawan food, and Okinawan ingredients.
Yeah, for sure. And then I have one last question, and then we have like a couple student sent in questions,
Okay.
So, but the last question is, so in Japan, I know there's a lot of like kenjinkai, which is like groups of, people who are from the same area or prefecture. But, nowadays, like a lot of the number of kenjinkai in Japan are dwindling while, the Okinawan kenjinkai are kind of like growing. So I was wondering like what makes the Okinawan kenjinkai more able to garner more support than kenjinkai in Japan? What makes it, different?
That's a great question. And I think it's something that a lot of organizations, and not just in Hawaii, but all over the world, are grappling with. And I think the answer is to remain connected and relevant to somebody. And that's what I meant by like that feeling of connectedness. It's an emotional connection, right? The reason why many of the Okinawan clubs and things, still have members that care is because they feel, one, a sense of gratitude, and that the club itself perpetuates this helping of members, helping of families, helping of our people. So there is this sense of gratitude. One thing that somebody told me is that they didn't realize how valuable our Okinawan club was. We have a little club called Gaza Yonogusku Doshikai, which is my family's club, until her father passed away. And, unless you've experienced, a lot of people, that's a very trying time, right? And many times the Okinawan clubs will come out and help with the funeral preparations. We understand that the family is going through a tough time right now. A lot of times it's even financial, like people often will give, not a lot, maybe it's $20, here and there, but people tend to give during that time. And the support she felt in that time when she felt she was really down, that to her, and then for life now, she will always be very grateful to our club because even though she wasn't very active, the club came out and supported her and her family during this very tough time. I think that's what people remember. And that's, a lot of the performing arts too, like making sure that performing arts is an important part of the club culture, just because it's an emotional connection. And, it's something that you want to keep doing as we go on and on. And for a lot of people, maybe they've never taken Okinawan dance, or they've never taken, any kind of Okinawan musical instrument, but they talk to their grandmother and then they find out that their grandmother just loves the sound, right? And then they'll do whatever it takes, right? To make sure that grandma is able to hear the Okinawan music. And then it kind of grows on them, right? Because and they go out of their way to make sure that and they can see the joy, right, in their grandmother or their grandfather's face when the music comes on, right? Boom. And I think that's part of why we keep bringing people back. We keep and then we want to make sure that people understand the stories behind our Okinawan culture and to be proud. I think a lot of it for our Okinawan community, the reason we feel so connected is there is a sense that there's so much that we have overcome, right? And that we shouldn't forget the stories of the past when people were ashamed to be Okinawan. People were ashamed to be, to say, they had quote unquote weird names because they weren't Japanese, right? And so there's that sense of like, we shouldn't feel ashamed. We should be proud. And here's so many different reasons why you should be proud. Here are the stories, like the pigs from the sea story is like how the Hawaii Okinawan community got together and rallied and like fundraised a huge amount of money to take pigs over to Okinawa so that they could revive the pig industry, which is so important to like the livelihoods in Okinawa. That's a whole another story for another day, I can tell you. But if you go to, if you look up pigs from the sea, it's an amazing story, and it's really our origin story. And I think making sure that we have a solid origin story like that, and that our future generations understand how the Hawaii United Okinawa Association came to be, will help it continue to grow, right? And you continue to give people a reason to be proud, and you continue to give people reasons why they want to tell their kids about these stories, and for people to feel a strong identity, connection, right? To the Okinawan community is what will help us keep relevant in the future.
Yeah. Wow. I was like, wow. And also, and also I think I remember getting told that the original Kenjinkai in Okinawa was everything was obviously not in English.
Yep.
And then I was wondering how that the Okinawan clubs there decided to transition to English, while the other Kenjinkai in Japan kind of stayed within Japanese.
I'm sure it was a tough transition. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie. I'm fourth generation, so I'm kind of removed. But
Mhm.
what I've heard from other stories is that I'm sure so it's between the Issei and the Nisei, right? First and second generation, that you have this major like language split. And then by the Sansei, most of our Sansei, the third generation here in Hawaii, they don't speak very much Japanese.
Right.
And so they really, I give credit to our Sansei generation for trying to move the organization to make it more relevant for them, right? They needed something that wasn't all in Japanese because none of them spoke or read Japanese. And I think it was a matter of our older generation letting them lead as well, like letting go of the reins a little bit so that the new generation, in that sense, it was the third generation, take on leadership roles and change things into English and make that change. A lot of people, here's an example. So back in the day, they would always have like the regular Kenjinkai, and then they would have a women's group, right? Separate women's group, Fujinkai or whatever it was, right? Like the separate women's group. And there was a point in the Okinawan Association where, of course, all the leaders were men, and I remember my father talking about this, so it must have been within his life, in his early years of being involved, where the third generation folks were like, why don't we just have the women be leaders in the regular group? Like we don't need to have a separate group for them to be leaders in. We should bring that together. And of course, I'm sure that ruffled feathers, right? But let's not make a separate women's group. That doesn't make sense anymore. We should have them just be leaders in our larger organization. There's no need to make a separate women's group.
Yeah.
That I give a lot of credit to the generation before us who had to fight for that, right? They had to fight for that. And then, I think it was the early 90s that we finally had our first female president of the Okinawan Association, but it takes a while, right?
Yeah, it does.
So we finally had our first woman president in the early 90s. Her name was Jane Serikaku, and then she became our executive director. So, a lot of realizing what the generation before us had to fight for, and making sure that we don't take that for granted too, right? Like, and remembering those lessons, like we don't need us, knowing that there's going to be shifts like that, and that's going to have to do with the larger culture around us, where I'm sure that was the era of women's rights and all these other things, and so the Okinawan Association isn't insulated from that, right? And so they were talking about, okay, how do we get more women from the 80s, 70s and 80s? They're talking about how do we get more women involved, but it takes a while. So.
And I think that language transition definitely is another reason why Okinawan groups are a lot more, are a lot larger now.
You'll see the transition now. We've moved everything to English so that the majority of our population can understand it. But there is also a push to make sure that those of us, especially fourth, fifth generation, give us opportunities to learn Japanese and Uchinaguchi, right? To go back. And realizing that we got to kind of know both, right? So, but that's
like
another way
songs, the
yes.
songs that I learned, like everything, it's so interesting because when we learn new songs, not only do they, just tell us how to play it, teach us, but they also tell us the meaning and, how to, the hatsuon, the pronunciation, how to, say it.
For so long, I didn't learn Japanese as a child. I learned it more as an adult. I went to college, took it at high school, took it in college, and then I studied abroad in Saitama-ken. And I learned, just from taking classes, and I learned from other college students, basically. But I remember so clearly looking up words for an Okinawan song once and not being able to find it anywhere and being so confused. Only after realizing that I was looking up Uchinaguchi words. I was looking up Okinawan words in a Japanese dictionary and not finding them and wondering why, and then I had to talk to somebody from Okinawa and like, ping, the light went off, right? Like, this is not, the song was Alberto Shiroma's Katate ni Sanshi wo. And he uses a term called ni seta. niseta.
Oh,
And
yeah,
like I was
yeah.
looking up the word niseta and I could not find it anywhere. I don't know. Somebody was like, no, that's an Okinawan word for young person. And I was like, oh, and realizing,
Yeah, yeah.
the difference and realizing that, oh, maybe I should learn some Okinawan words too while I was studying Japanese. But I think it's important to learn both, I think it's not, as Okinawa is part of Japan, it is, the economic language of the, it's really important that you're able to converse in Japanese, but also being able to understand that we have to also kind of take pride in the Uchinaguchi language and making sure that we don't completely lose it. It's kind of like Hawaiian and English, right? So
yeah. And then I learned Japanese when I was just, my mom is from Japan, so she taught me. And then we also have exchange students come to our house, and they're all from Japan, so then I get to teach them and I get to learn all their slang or whatever. But then when I play the sanshin and then I sing the songs, and they don't know what I'm talking about.
No idea what you have.
I mean, they're like, oh yay, but like they don't know what I'm saying.
No
so
idea.
it's like, yeah, it sounds good, but then like other than that, like they don't understand. But it's pretty like it's pretty fun because some of the girls that come to our house, they're really into hula. And so I'm from Hawaii, but I'm not into hula.
Yeah.
But they're from Japan, and so it's interesting, seeing the culture.
Yeah. And I think I mean, even for me, I took like after school classes in hula, but I was never actually really into it. But I really started to love it once I left Hawaii and went to college. Like that's kind of the irony of it. And that's okay, and that's actually a good thing. I think that like those of us who are super excited about our Japanese / Okinawan culture and live outside of that and then go back to Okinawa or Japan and see like they're more interested in Hawaii than we are. But like, and that's okay, and that's exciting, and that's like what's beautiful about it, I think. But it also made me realize that like, I need to learn at least a few hula because they're gonna expect me to like be able to do that when I go, and because you are, whether you like it or not, you represent Hawaii. And so you should represent Hawaii proudly, right? And so it's really important that all of us have like a basic understanding of like some basic Hawaiian words, basic, I think that's really important for everybody in Hawaii, no matter if you're Hawaiian or not, to at least know some of the basics of the history, language, and culture. Because no matter where we go, we will represent Hawaii. So.
And also, I think this ties in perfectly with one of the student questions. This is from Chloe, and she's a sophomore, and she wants to know, have you ever felt disconnected from your Okinawan culture? And like, if so, how did you bridge that gap again? Because obviously there probably is times where, because I know for me, there's definitely times where I felt disconnected from the Japanese culture, from,
Yes, and I actually but I didn't think of it as a bad thing. It just made me realize that I am American. So, it was actually when I was living in Okinawa, and I was working there through the JET program, and I was, clearly my upbringing and how I think of myself as an Okinawan American. Definitely, I have an American lens. My point of view on the world is very American. And not realizing, and that at that point, actually, when I was trying to explain to my Okinawan counterparts like how I thought of like our roles as teachers, and especially as like a I would say a young woman too, like trying to teach students about like women empowerment and things like that. That's a very American way of thinking about
exactly,
education and things like that. And they're like, whoa, easy, and then also being really I grew up in the Okinawan community from the time I was born, right? My father was actually the past president of the organization. So it's not like it was really a choice. But realizing that, the things that I learned as a child, Okinawan dance, and things like that, I kind of took for granted. I realized
so,
as I got older, you know, I was like, I was like, you know, oh, I gotta go practice again. Oh, I didn't, you know, and not realizing how much of a gift it was, I think was when I felt the most distant from my Okinawan culture. So what it did was it made me want to delve into it more. And what, but not in a performing arts sense, because I was honestly, I was a little bit tired. I was tired of doing performing arts stuff. I delved into it through, I was a politics major. And I was like, you know what? I don't know anything about Okinawan politics. I don't know anything about like that side of Okinawa. So I actually did my senior thesis on the varying opinions in Okinawa about the U.S. military presence. I was like, what's the most controversial thing I could find, right? And that what I found through my research was like, it's not one way or the other. There's a lot of varying different opinions in Okinawa. And I think that's why we see a lot of struggle throughout the years. There's a lot of people whose livelihoods depend on the military bases, but then there's a lot of people who also, you know, it's their life work to try and get the military bases out of there. So which was it? And to say it's not one or the other right now for Okinawa. And then talking to different generations and how their view on that is different. So I delved into Okinawan culture not through the typical performing arts lens, which is how I was exposed to it, but I wanted to take a totally different aspect and learn more about that.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that you, instead of going towards like, you know, music,
like
dance,
the cultural side.
It's more,
And my thinking behind that was only because, okay, within the politics department, what do I know better than anybody else here? And I couldn't really come up with anything. The politics department is made up of a bunch of really brilliant people who are studying law, people who are studying, you know, policy, people who are studying all kinds of different things. And I thought, well, what am I good at? And I couldn't really come up with anything. I was like, oh wait, you know what I know better than anybody else in this room is Okinawan culture. But that's only because I know it from a performing arts standpoint. So if I took that part, and I know that nobody else in this room knows more about it than I do, in you know, because they have no understanding of it. And what if I flip that into more of a socio-economic understanding of Okinawa? Then I could have a really deep understanding of it. And that's basically why I chose that. It was just this sense of like, what do I know? What can I offer? What do I already have a little bit of a head start on? And I could go even deeper that way. That's why I picked that topic. It's honest to God why I picked it. I felt like the professors, I knew at least a little bit more than the professors, you know? In terms of trying to figure out what I'm good at. Like, what am I interested in? You know, my professors asked me, what do you want to study? And I was like, I don't know. And he's
I
like,
think
well,
that's good about
what do you
having
feel?
dialogue. Having dialogue like this is like good for people so that they can know what they want to do. So you know what they
like, I don't, you know, when somebody asks you, what are you passionate about?
The
reaction is kind of like, well, I don't know, you know. But kind of being forced to answer that in terms of, so my professor asked me, he's like, well, what do you feel like you, and that's the exact question that he asked me, and I didn't have an answer right away. He's like, what do you feel like you're good at? Right? And I was like, right? And it took me a while to figure out, what do I think I'm good at? And that's when it came to me, you know, like, I was like, oh, I know what I know. And I'm like, basically, I'm comparing myself to all these other very smart people at university on the mainland, right? That, like, you know, they're studying, you know, climate change, they're studying global, you know, all these things. And I was like, I don't know what I'm really good at. And then I thought about it and I was like, what do I know better than all of them? I know Okinawan history and culture.
Right.
And how can I flip that into something that's just a cultural interest into an academic interest?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense how you went from one point A to point B and connected everything together.
I just didn't want to feel dumb. I was like, well,
Yeah.
if I know I'm talking about Okinawan stuff, I won't feel dumb in front of
Yeah.
these people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know at least a little bit more than they do.
Hmm.
So
Okay,
but
I
yeah,
think
find something that you feel
yeah.
like you know, you don't have to be the expert at the time, but find something that you want to be an expert in. Eventually, you want to feel like you're an expert in something and go for it. You know,
Yeah.
so
And if
that
you're an expert in something, then you'll most likely have an interest or like a passion about it. So it's easier
Mhm.
to,
Right.
choose that as a career path.
So maybe that's a better question instead of what are you passionate about? It's what do you
Yeah.
want to be an expert in?
Yeah.
You know, and knowing that you're not there yet, but what do you want to be an expert in? And like spending a lot of time. Somebody told me, you know, it takes 10,000 hours. Okay, so this is like Olympic level people. Like when you
Yeah.
want to become
Yeah.
something really good at something, it takes 10,000 hours.
Hmm.
So what is it that you want to be really good at? And then you're going to have to put the hours in to get there.
Yeah.
Maybe not 10,000 of them, right? But 'cause that's literally years and years of your life. But I think that's the question, right? Like, what do you want to be good at? What do you want to be known for?
And I think, as a president of the Okinawan Association is also the account director at IQ 360, you obviously have to be an expert in what you do. But
Right.
also, like, this question comes from Alyssa, and she's a junior, and she wants to know what are your biggest obstacles as a woman in leadership and leadership positions. So, like, because obviously you have so much expertise in these fields, but obviously that comes with a lot of difficulties as well, as I
Right.
probably assume. So, what are some of the difficulties?
That's a great question. And I think especially as a young leader, as a young woman in leadership, oftentimes your challenge, and this is going to be not just me, but other people, is having people take you seriously. You'll walk into the room, and we all have our biases and our prejudices, right? You walk into a room, and they don't assume you're the leader because you're the youngest female there.
Yeah.
And I noticed the thing that I don't get angry at people when this happens, only because I noticed myself doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Somebody else will walk into the room, they're a young female, and I make the automatic assumption that they're not the person in charge.
Yeah.
And that's my own biases, right? So that's why I can't get mad when somebody does it to me because I'm like, oh,
Because, yeah.
shoot, you know, I did it to somebody else. But that is the challenge, and especially for most of us, and I'll just go ahead and say it, especially for young Asian females, you look young for, and this will be a plus later in life, but you look young, right? And so a
Yeah.
lot of people can't believe that you're the you're
Yeah.
the president of the organization. Oh, and I kind of enjoy that, you know, I kind of enjoy that
Yeah.
surprise. But the only way to feel confident in that is knowing that you have the experience, and confidence to me comes from overcoming difficult situations. So if you've overcome complex problems, or you've finished very difficult projects in school, or you've planned huge events, you've done things that build your confidence. It helps you walk into that room and know that you belong there.
Yeah.
You know, you belong in a leadership position because you know how to deal with problems. You've
Right.
dealt
Yeah.
with difficult people. I think dealing with difficult people is a huge aspect of leadership. That is the hardest part for most jobs.
Yeah.
It's
I think
not
so,
the
yeah.
numbers, it's not the paperwork. It is trying to convince people that you may not necessarily like or enjoy working with to get on board with you. And if you can master that, you'll feel comfortable going into a room, you know, and as long as and there's a level of once I realized I was having an adult conversation with somebody, and I was probably in my early 20s, because we were agreeing to disagree and not getting angry about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this isn't personal, but I highly disagree with you.
Yeah.
And they kind of treated me the same way. Like, I hear you, but we're gonna agree to disagree. And I was like, wow, this is what adults do, right?
Yeah.
Or hopefully mature adults, I should say.
Yeah.
You know, and somebody asked me, like, how do you have the confidence to, like,
Right. Yeah.
be in charge of this big group. And it's because I've actually been in a leadership position with the organization since 2011, 2012 maybe. So it's taken 8 years, right? Like it's not like I was just thrown into the position without any background. If you had asked me back in 2011, 2012, if I would be HUA president in 2020, I would have told you no way, right? No way. But between, that's almost 8 years of doing projects, figuring out, who runs what project, who are the important key people, how do you talk to them, how do you convince people, how do you debate with people? And that's always an uncomfortable position. How do you disagree with people and still be able to work with them? And if you can do that, you can, if you can figure that out early in life, you can totally be a young, in top of your organization at a young age, because that's the type of maturity that they're looking for. They're not, sometimes maturity doesn't necessarily come with age, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if you can deal with people and not blow up and not, have a freak out or whatever it is that, just kind of shows immaturity, or then people will have confidence in you as a leader. And that's something I think as a young leader, those are things that you have to develop early on. And especially as a young woman, it's dressing the part and walking in confidently and knowing your stuff. It's not just being confident without knowing your stuff, right? Walking in there knowing that you've done your research, you know what the options are, you got all the information, and we're making this decision based on all the information we have. I know you don't agree with it. I know half of you in this room probably don't agree with it. And I'm going to tell you why we chose this way. And then sometimes it'll be up to a vote or whatever it is, right? But that's a scary position to be in, right? For people to be angry at you, possibly. But as long as you know why you made certain decisions, then it should give you the confidence to present it that way and say, like, this is what I think we should do.
Yeah, for sure.
That doesn't come overnight. I wouldn't say I was not prepared to do that back in 2011, 2012, 2013. Heck no.
Yeah.
But it definitely, at watching other people do it, watching other leaders do it, no matter if they're male or female, watch others do it. And sometimes by watching others, you'll see good examples and you'll see bad examples.
Yeah.
Take note of the bad examples too. Like if I were in that position, I think this is one of the most, one of my MBA professors told me, if you see a CEO or somebody in a leadership position in business doing something that you don't think is right, jot it down, but also jot down how you would have done it differently. So when it's your turn in that position, it's easy to criticize, right?
Right.
Easy to criticize, but if you were in that position, what would you do? And maybe you would come to the same answer. I don't know, because it's not as easy to act as it is to criticize.
Yeah.
So, but making a note of like what you would do differently. So sometimes your greatest quote unquote mentors are not necessarily the good ones. Or how you see somebody reacting or poorly, and jot it down.
Yeah, just jot it down. Yeah. So like experience builds confidence, and
right, and experience and going out there and getting those experiences, right? I think sometimes you have to go out there and get them yourself. They're not going to be handed to you, so you have to volunteer for things. You have to volunteer for a leadership position that might be a little uncomfortable. Like it might be a lot of work, and it's going to be maybe not so fun sometimes, right? But there's a lot of meetings and there's a lot of things you have to do. But other than but it'll give you that experience to give you the confidence to be able to lead organizations. So, and I'm grateful. I'm really grateful because I had a lot of mentors who are men, actually, and especially like the generation above us, they kind of grew up in this like, okay, we should we should do what we can to lift up women, you know, and especially into leadership positions. And so they make a conscious effort to do that. And I'm eternally grateful for that, because I never felt a sense of like people looking down on me and saying, oh, you can't do that. You know, they were always, especially the men, I would say, were trying to, you know, bring me into the leadership, you know, teach me how they were doing things. But that also comes with, they probably saw something in me that said like, I could do this.
So, you know, we're learning from you. So, and it's also like, it's like paying it forward. So we're learning from you and what you learned, and then hopefully we get to learn, or we get to teach future generations.
Yeah, I think it's definitely helpful, because I had a lot of great, you know, adults in my life, with men and women, to kind of show me the way, and also kept the ones that I thought were not great examples, you know, kept note of that too.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of is a good place to conclude everything. And, you know, if you could let listeners know where they can find you and.
Yeah, so probably the easiest way to find me is on our IQ360 website. We have little bios of all of us. Kylie has my email address, and also on our Okinawan HUOA.org is the Hawaii United Okinawa Association. I can be reached through the office there too. But if anybody has specific questions or anything like that, if you want to send them to Kylie, and then Kylie can forward them to me, I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, but thank you for just making time for us today. It was like a really good conversation. You know, just I learned a lot, and I'm more than confident that the listeners will learn a lot too. So
well, I really enjoy doing this. So thank you for asking me.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning into our podcast, Where Do We Go? We hope that our guests inspired you as much as we were. Make sure to check out our website for more information about our organization, WeGo, as well as our Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify. We hope you have a great rest of your day and continue to lead and create positive change. This is Kylie, signing off. We'll see you next time. Bye.